Want to think like a genius? Keep watching. Hey there, this is Life Mastery Jim, and I'm Damon, and I teach people just like you cutting edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so that you can get these videos on a regular basis. What I'm going to teach in this video is a powerful NLP process that can solve many problems, and it's something that you can do by yourself. You don't need a practice partner to do it. Definitely helps if you do have a practice partner, but you don't need one. And by the end of this video, you're going to be able to put this into use right away, and you'll see how you can resolve conflicts. Like I said, you can solve problems. You can also learn how to build rapport much faster. This is a process that I learned in my first NLP training. It's something that I use to this day because it's part of the self-concept model that I teach. So when it comes to transformation, when it comes to understanding yourself and other people better, perceptual positions is an amazing tool to use with that. Like I said, I've been using it for years, and it's just as powerful now as it ever has been. And it's something in my toolbox that I use almost every coaching session that I do. Now, before I get into what perceptual positions is, feel free in the comments below to let me know what is your favorite NLP process, or what is an NLP process that you use that you get a lot out of, something that helps you a lot, and I will respond to you. Perceptual positions came about by modeling geniuses and finding out, well, what makes a genius a genius? Now, there's not just one thing, but one thing that they did find was this idea of perceptual positions. And those positions are me, my first person position. Like if you think about a story narration, the first person perspective, the perspective of the character also narrates, or you're living through that perspective of the main character, meaning the main character is not omnipotent. The main character doesn't know what the other characters are thinking. The main character doesn't experience anything that's outside of that main character's environment. Something that's happening in a different place at a different time, we don't know about because we're living it through the main character. So that is first position, and we're all in first position, right? This is where we live from. Maybe not all the time mentally, because our minds might wander somewhere else, and I'll get to that in a moment. But in general, we are our own first person perspective. The second position is the other person. And that is any other person other than myself, or in your case, any person other than yourself. So that could be anybody you're speaking to, and that can be on the phone, that can be in person, or it could even be a group. I'm going to try to keep things really simple here. So I'm not going to go to the bigger group elements, but let's stick with the other person. So whoever you're interacting with. Okay. And if you think about back to the story analogy, sometimes you have stories, movies, or books where the story is told not from the main character, but the narrator is a character in the story, just not the main character. So that character might have insights about the main character that the main character doesn't even have about themselves, because the main character can't observe themselves. But here you have this character who's in a story, not the main character, but can comment on what they observe about the main character. Okay. So that is other position. Now, the third position is an observer position. So these are the times where we sort of what we call disassociate in NLP, where I step outside of myself, and it's like I'm watching myself, but I'm also watching whatever's going on. So we all have had that experience. Some people call it disconnection. And most of the time it's thought of as being something rather negative. And it can be, because we don't always want to be detached and disconnected, but it can also be a useful tool. And I'll explain more about how we're going to use it as a useful tool in a moment. But the third person perspective is a neutral perspective. The third person perspective has no bias. They have no stake in the game. It's like a fly on the wall, just observing whatever is happening. So again, let's think about it. I'm interacting with someone, coming from my own perspective. That is first person. The perspective of the other person is second position. And then the perspective that is just outside of myself, but not the other person, is the third person, or the third position, neutral observer. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain a little bit more with each position. We're going to drill down a little bit more, and I'm going to explain what are the advantages of each position and what are the disadvantages. So first position, just being present, being here, being myself, really being in my own body, seeing everything from my own eyes, hearing everything from my own ears. I know that might sound funny at first, but I will explain in a moment. So that is the first position. The advantage of this is I'm very present. I'm very aware coming from this perspective, and I'm in it. Like this is where we really experience probably the highest highs that we experience, the most joys that we experience. It's going to be from a first position place. We're not stepping outside of ourselves mentally. So we're all here. We're connected. We're in it. We're doing it. So that is the advantage of first position. And in general, in our lives, we want to be in first position most of the time. When we go second position, it means I put my perspective into someone else's, and I try to get a sense of how they see me or how they perceive me. And we do this all the time. This is how we create sympathy and empathy. So when you see someone who's hurting and you feel that hurt, that means you're going second position with that person. You're not actually feeling that pain, whether it's mental or physical. But when you take that position, when you take their position, you do feel it. And it's a strange thing, but it's what creates us as humans. We are able to have sympathy and empathy for others. And so that's an indication of second position. So the advantage of second position is that we can perceive what someone else is feeling, or we can get a sense of what their experience of life is like. We can get a sense of what their experience is of ourselves. Now, the disadvantages of second position is this can also make us very self-conscious. If we go out to give a talk and we see this group of people, a lot of the times part of our perception is invested in, well, what do those people think about me? And when you divide your attention that way, you can't be fully present. You can't go in the flow because you're putting your mind in their perception, their position, and it can make you very self-conscious, which we don't want to be, especially when we're performing. Some other problems with second position is people who are codependent or overly in second position. They're living their lives through someone else. So of course, they give everything to that person. They sacrifice everything for that person. And some of this can be good to a certain extent, especially when you think about, say, like parents with kids. But it can even be overdone in that situation. You don't want to be codependent. You don't want to be living your life entirely for someone else. You want to make sure that you're balancing that with living your own life. Because the truth is that if you're codependent, you're not totally good for that person. You're not good for yourself, and you could also be hurting or neglecting other people around you. Pros and cons of second position. Third position. The benefit of third position is when we feel stuck, when we're in a problem, and we can't find a solution and we just feel like we're all boxed in. Well, if you go third position, you take a step out of it and say, okay, if I'm completely neutral and I look at myself and perhaps the other person who might be involved in this, completely neutral, and I step outside of the situation and take a look at it, this new perspective can bring all sorts of solutions and resources that you didn't see before. So it's great for stepping out of the problem and getting a new perspective of it. However, this is that disconnect place as well. And so when people say, well, I'm not present, or we say that person isn't very present, they're lost in their head or something like that, that's a person who's probably in third position. They're outside observing everything, but if you're always observing everything, then you're not really living it. So that would be the disadvantage of being in third position. So why do I want to know this at all? Well, first of all, know that you do all of this anyway. So sometimes when this is taught in an NLP training, people say, well, I can't do second position or I can't do third position. It's like, no. It's more about getting in touch with how you do it, when you do it, because everyone does it, with a few exceptions. A narcissist might not be able to go second position. A psychopath, I don't think, can go second position. They have no empathy or sympathy. It's always, they're living it from themselves or from that first person perspective. First, recognize that you do this anyway. And it would be great for you to explore this. And the easiest way to explore it is, if you don't have a friend nearby, you can just imagine the last time you saw that friend, what that experience was like. And so to be in first position means you would imagine that person right in front of you, or you might be sitting or you might be standing, and you imagine that you're actually there in that same location, wherever you were when you last saw your friend. And then float up out of your body and float into their body and perceive yourself as from their position, from their perspective. Now, this is not you being you looking back at yourself. You want to take on this person's neurology as much as possible. You want to, as much as you know about this person, you want to take on their perspective and look back at yourself. And this will bring about many surprises and insights. I love doing this exercise with people or walking people through this, because when they do this, they go, oh, wow, I never knew that there was that side of me. I never saw that before. And it is a truly eye-opening experience to do this. And then you can go to that third position. You step out of both of it. You're watching these two people interact, and you're sort of imagining that you don't know who these people are. You have nothing at stake. You're just observing. And this is a very eye-opening experience. It's like, wow, I didn't know that I acted like that, or that I looked like that, or that we got along so well, or we didn't get along so well. And then you take all of this information from these different perceptions and bring it back to you here in this situation. And then you can step out of the memory of that and come back to who you are now. And now you have all this new information. And most of it is where like our intuitions and insight comes from. And now you're very consciously aware of it. And so overall, if you're just doing this with a friend, it can be just a very pleasant experience where you're learning so much more about yourself and whoever you imagined was there, whoever your friend is. Now, this can be extremely good when you have a conflict with someone. And you can, again, you don't need to be in front of that person who you have a conflict with. This would be very difficult to do this with if you're facing off with someone who's, there's a lot of tension with them. So you'd want to do this at home or somewhere comfortable so you don't have to be in a tense situation. And imagine that person in front of you. And at first, if you're in first position, you're going to probably be thinking all the reasons why you don't like this person, you don't get along with this person, and then float up out of yourself and go second position and really be that other person. Don't be afraid of the new sympathy and empathy you probably will then feel for that person, and the new understandings and intuitions you have about why they're doing what they're doing. In most cases, most people you don't get along with are not just trying to hurt you, even though it might seem that way. Or if they are, maybe you suddenly understand why they were trying to do that. And though it might be a twisted explanation and a twisted logic, you at least have a new understanding about this person. And then, of course, go here. This is probably where you're going to see a lot of solutions in this conflict, is here. And then come back to here. And a lot of times people will resolve conflicts that they have with someone without even talking to them, because they go through this process and now they have a new understanding. Now, you don't have to have a conflict. Like I said, you can do this for anything. You can do this if you're in a relationship with someone. It works really, really well. I know people, and this is a little more advanced, but they do this with inanimate objects like trees and water and things like that. And they've had some amazing experiences. But first, do it with people and just notice how the potential here to solve incredible problems that you couldn't solve before, to bring so much more information, insight, and intuition to what you do, whatever it is that you do, and wherever it is that you do it, and whoever it is you do it with. This can get addictive. You can do this a lot. And so you might be saying, well, wait a minute, if I'm just pretending to be these different perspectives, that doesn't really tell me anything. And that is not true, because when you think about when you see someone who you know and you're interacting with them, you're not actually interacting directly with them. Those are electrical impulses going through your neurology that comes in through your five senses. So in a sense, this person already is a part of you when they're in your presence. And that's not the easiest thing to understand for a lot of people, but this merges really well with Eastern thought. So if I feel a disconnect from someone, I'm not actually feeling the disconnect from them. I'm feeling a disconnect in my neurology. And so I want to heal that. I don't want boundaries in my own neurology. This is what creates limitation. So an example of this is many people will go to therapy and they can heal old wounds. And let's say they had some old wounds that had to do with their parents, maybe their father. Maybe their father did something or said something that wounded them and they weren't even aware of it, but through lots of therapy, they become aware of it and then they healed it. Well, what if that father had already passed away? But there's still a problem being created in the neurology because there's still the wound and there's still the memory of that father doing whatever. But it's still occurring in the neurology. But it can also be healed, and it can be healed without the other person there. And this happens all the time in therapy, and not necessarily through this process. So how would that even be possible for someone who's not even in your presence to be inside of you? We do it all the time with our memories. And those memories can be traumatic. And so when we heal those memories, we don't need the other person to be there to say that they're sorry or whatever it is. They could be long gone. But we can still heal these traumas because they're occurring in our neurology. So when you think about interacting with someone, you're not really directly interacting with them. You're interacting with your own neurology based on the information that is coming through your five senses. Now, that might take some time to think over and work through, but it's definitely worth it because it changes the way that you look at the world. If you want more really cool NLP techniques like this one, I have a 4-part video series for you that's absolutely free. If you go to the description or if you go to the comments below, you'll see pinned to the top comment is a link where you can click that link and get immediate access to the first video. And then you'll get a video every day after that for a total of 4 where I teach you more NLP techniques. It's a great way to check out to see if NLP is right for you, if you enjoy it, if it works for you. So without having to go spend a bunch of money on a training. If you like this video, make sure you click the like button right here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll be notified when new videos come out. And while you're down there, make sure you get your access to the 4-part video series. If you can think of a friend who you think would also like this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.